No.
We're open now.
Okay, well, I'm happy and privileged to
Yeah, we don't wait till 9.
to introduce the Clark Center Cybersecurity Curriculum team. And so Sid and Paige and Michael are really going to be doing this. I'll let you all introduce yourself and give them background and then go ahead and start your presentation. So I'm turning it over to, I guess, Sid, you're going to kick it off.
Yes, that's the plan. Well, thank you, first of all, NCyTE, for inviting us. I'm assuming you can hear me, Stephen. If yes, you can. That was awesome. I'm Sid Kaza. I'm from Towson University. Towson University is just north of Baltimore in Maryland. I see at least one person from Baltimore City Community College here, so we are certainly sharing weather with you. Towson University is a CAE CD and has been since 2002, and we are also a CAE CO cyber operations and have been since 2011. We are coming up for our redesignations for at least the CO. I think we have a few more years in CD. And we at Towson, we have several cybersecurity programs. We've been involved in cyber in a while. And we have several faculty as well, close to now, I think maybe even 20 faculty in a department of 50 who are involved in cybersecurity education and research. So we are very excited to be here. NCyTE is doing so much, and Whatcom is doing so much. So thank you again for inviting us. What I will do for introducing everybody is maybe switch to our presentations. I don't know if Mike, you are doing it or one of us is. There you go. Thank you. So before I start, let me first tell you about the folks who are actually going to be presenting, including me. Paige Zalepa, who just started her screen share. Paige Zalepa is a full-time employee at SecureEd. And I'll tell you more about SecureEd, but SecureEd is a nonprofit that hosts Clark. And Mike Franz is the systems engineer at SecureEd, supports Clark and many other applications that SecureEd develops. Both Paige and Mike, I would like to say, are Towson University graduates. We are incredibly proud of them. And now, besides being full-time employees at SecureEd, Paige just started her PhD in information technology, and she'll be working among many things in cyber education and AI. So we are pretty excited. Both of them also teach as adjuncts, so they are very involved in teaching in computer science. But I would also like to say that we have a few students of ours who are on the call listening in as well. So I'd like to welcome Blair Thomas, who's a student at Towson, Chichi, who's a PhD student at Towson. Blair just graduated out of her BS in IS. Chichi is a PhD, doing her PhD in IT. And Reggie, I see Reggie as well, who just started in his BS in computer science program. I don't think I have missed anybody, but we might have other students join as well. So let me tell you about Clark. So Clark is on the face of it is a cybersecurity digital library. You'll hear a lot more about it, and the library part is really the face of it. There's so much that goes into having Clark. But I want to tell you the story of how it really started. How it really started was about 6 years ago. NSA and NSF, being the primary members, were looking for a place to host cybersecurity curriculum. As we know, all of us who've been in this area for a while, cybersecurity curriculum is hard to find and has been hard to find for a while. And so about 6 years ago, NSA created a project, solicitation to build a cybersecurity library to host all the cybersecurity curriculum that was produced by NSA, NSF, and possibly other federal agencies and others as well. there were 3 pilots that were made. Clark was one of them. There were 3 universities funded for it. And Clark was chosen eventually as the winner of that competition, so to speak. And Towson University got a grant to build Clark along with the community surrounding it. For about 3 years, Towson was the PI for Clark, and then we very quickly realized that it was a product that needed to spin off into its own company, so it could have a nonprofit status and attract funding. So what you see on the screen here is all the folks and then some who we would really like to thank for supporting something like Clark, because Clark is really for free curriculum for the community. And these are our various funders, and the one I would mention, hopefully you see your associations here as well, but one I would mention in addition to NSA would be NCyTE. And the story I always want to say about NCyTE is when Clark ran out of funding about 3 years ago, we really did not want to shut it down because it had all this curriculum from a lot of people. And NCyTE Center funded a small portion of Clark to keep us alive while the whole thing picked up again. So now Clark has been alive and well for 6 years, and we plot a future that is on a 5-year timeline. So we are very excited about that. The nonprofit that runs Clark is very embedded in our community and interacts with our community greatly. So I'm going to hand it over at this point to Paige and Mike, really Mike, who's going to start us off by talking more about Clark.
All right, so hello everyone. As Dr. Costa introduced me, I'm Mike Franz. I'm the systems engineer. So I just want to add on to that. If anything is broken, I get those wonderful emails and I try to fix it as quickly as possible for you guys. But without further ado, I would like to, start off with who is Clark, not what is Clark. This is actually a question we've gotten several times. Who is this Clark person? Clark actually it's an acronym. It stands for Cybersecurity Labs and Research Knowledge Base. So with that, you kind of see 2 fronts of a consumer and contributor side of the platform, where if you're an educator, you could use Clark to build your curriculum and share it with the community. Some of the features there is that we use Bloom's-based outcomes. So every single learning object on Clark has a learning outcome that is based around Bloom's taxonomy. And then the other system as you're building your curriculum is modularized content. So this helps educators break up their content into small individual pieces. So it's not just one big file download essentially. And then the consumer side of it is we have easy search and filter browsing. So we have a browse page. Sorry.
3634, what's up?
Okay. You have a simple browse page where you can easily search and filter for the learning objects that you need. And then once you find learning objects that you want, it's just a simple download that downloads right to your local machine.
Now, some of the other questions we get are what's available on Clark. And if you've already navigated to our site using the URLs that we provided before, you'll probably see we have about 1,200 unique pieces of curriculum, and they vary across different topics. There's different lengths. They're a part of different projects. They're from different people. So we just wanted to kind of highlight a few that are more popular, as well as some to kind of talk a little bit more about our modularized approach to curriculum. So the first one, we have a module 1, Introduction to Networks. This is out of Dakota State University, and this is a small module, usually meant to take about 4 to 10 hours, depending on how long your courses are or maybe what you might need. And this one has a lot of hands-on as well, and it's also part of a larger course. So whether you're looking for just something to plug into maybe your introduction to computer science class and you just need something for networks, I know I'm looking for one for the fall right now, or if you're looking to have an entire introduction to network course, to get an idea maybe of pacing, looking at other people's syllabi, just to see what other topics people are covering, what order they're covering it in. And for this presentation, I believe these slides will be available. All the links to this material is also provided down below. So if you're looking for this later on, you can find that. Another one that is really popular is our Principles of Cyber Law and Policy. And this one is really unique because it contains many different children. And these children are modules, nanomodules, or micromodules. And these are just smaller bits of curriculum. Nanomodules on our site are about an hour long, typically meant to be a lab, maybe an individual lecture, or maybe just an in-class activity that you might do. Micromodules a little bit longer, maybe like that 1 to 4 hour range, something that you might cover in a week's time, depending on if you have like a 3-day-a-week class, 2-day-a-week, or 1-day-a-week class. And what's very unique is that all of these can be plugged in to create this one course. Or if you're looking for example, 3 branches of government, if you need to cover that and you just don't have material on that, you could just grab that unique piece. Another one we'd like to bring to your attention is one that was recently released from NCyTE Center on critical infrastructure. So again, if you're looking for an entire course on critical infrastructure, all of it is organized. Or if you're just looking for threats or risk management or introduction to systems and SCADA, you can go and download those individual pieces as well. One thing to note also, all of our curriculum is licensed under Creative Commons non-commercial, which means when you download it, if you need to change something to make it fit your course, you are more than welcome to do that. All of the curriculum on Clark can be done in this fashion. So if you're just going to use the quiz or the quiz questions, or if you want to pull the PowerPoints or the learning outcomes, you can use those pieces as long as you attribute it back to the original authors. And we have an easy way to do that on the details page that Mike will show you a little bit later. The last one we'd like to bring to your attention for anyone who's interested in K-12 material, we are home to the NCyTE collection. So all of the NCyTE material that's being taught in all of the camps across the United States this summer are coming onto Clark, and we're starting to see some more. This is one of our most popular objects for researching cybersecurity careers. And we have many more coming in. So if you are looking for K-12, keep an eye out for the next couple of weeks. I know we've had submissions pretty much every week, and our team is working on reviewing those to ensure high quality. And I'm going to talk about the review process a little bit later. So one of your other questions might be, where does Clark get its content? And Dr. Kaza talked a little bit before about this community that we're a part of. And we're very fortunate to be a part of a community that really wants to work together and build this type of repository so that we can have longevity for all of this great material that we're creating. So we get our curriculum from the CAE community, from partners like NCyTE, Cyber Skills to Work, NCyTE, the 502 project, just to name a few, but also people out there in the community that want to provide this information back to the community as well. We've had contributors from many different universities across the United States. We've also had people from outside of the United States look at from Puerto Rico, and we have some really great objects that are actually in Spanish. So it's not just necessarily what's coming out of one group, it's from everyone in our community. And it's not just curriculum. We listen to feedback. As Mike said, he fixes all of the issues that come in, but we're also looking to try and make Clark better and more usable for everyone that's trying to use our platforms. And we also take in best practices. When Clark was built, we looked at digital repositories, digital libraries, and how all of these things can kind of live on. And we keep doing that so that we can have not only high quality curriculum, but also high quality systems for you all to use.
So in addition to the people who contribute, or once you contribute, you actually get a user profile. So part of the registration process, you're just a user on the system. And then from your user profile, you can see all the collections that you've submitted to. So in this case, we have Stephen Miller, who's submitted to Cyber Skills to Work. And then this would be the community facing, you could share this as the community facing, you've contributed to the community. Sorry, I apologize. And then if you submit to multiple collections, that will also show in your user profile. So if you want, you can always direct people to your user profile to see the objects that you worked on specifically, or also as to show that you've contributed back to the community as well.
So I said I was going to talk a little bit about the review process. We get many submissions over the past 2 weeks. We've had about 55 different submissions to Clark, which has been very exciting for us. But our goal has always been to provide not just curriculum, but high quality curriculum. And we have a couple of different ways that we do this. So when we receive a submission on Clark, using the modularized model and all of the things that we have available on our site, we also go through what we call an editorial and technical review process. So what we're looking for in editorial review is those things that we check for when we create slide decks or quizzes or exams. The typical spelling and grammar, formatting, headings, those types of things, making sure that it's very readable and understandable. We also take a look at links. I know one thing I always run into, I hate being up there in front of my class and I click on a link and it takes me to a 404 and I have to go find it again, or I have to find somewhere else. And we go through and we look through that and we make sure that there's no issues like that. We also review technical. So if we get virtual machines or code files or any type of technical tool that we might want to just look through, we have a team that will look through that and also provide feedback to the author. Our goal here is not just to host your curriculum, but we want to work with these authors so that we can have the highest quality of curriculum there. Once we get through the author engagement piece and kind of getting it up to high quality, we go ahead and release that on Clark. And we move into this process of kind of curricular integration. And during that process, one thing where the profiles kind of help out here is where you can look at statistics for your learning object. So if you submit to Clark and you have something released, you can see how many times it was downloaded, how many times it was saved, just to see the usage in the community. I have one learning object right now that I believe is about 40 downloads away from having 1,000 unique downloads. So there's been 1,000 downloads that have come into that object, which is really exciting to see. Now that object is from a few years ago. So we might have to do something called a revision. Let's say the link doesn't work anymore, or there's a structure that has changed. And that's kind of where it comes into, how is this material sustained? Our goal has always been sustaining the material for the long term. And we've been looking at this idea of relevance. And we have this kind of theoretical model that we like to work with, where all of the curriculum that we look at it centered around the cyber landscape, everything that's happening out there that we're trying to prepare our students for. At the end of the day, we want our students to be competent in the things that they're going to need out there in the real world. And we also want to have curriculum that we can use to help prepare them for that. So we have two different facets to this, and we like to separate these out. Our first one is maintenance of open source curriculum. One thing that we talk about a lot, and especially as Mike and I teach, and we work with a lot of the professors here at Towson, is that there's normal things that we do to our curriculum every semester. You know, we check those links, we make sure that the slides still flow in the way that we want to present them. Open source curriculum is a little bit different in a way. This is submitted so that other people can use it. And we want to assist authors in keeping it maintained. So we have a relevance process that will allow us to maintain links and grammar and headings, file formats, tool locations, things of that nature. And then we also have this idea of classroom and workforce relevance, which is something I'm actively working on in my PhD, to look at how can we not only just look at those regular maintenance pieces that we're going to have to do on curriculum, but looking at it through the lens of the entire cyber landscape, and how can we keep all of these things together so that we can prepare our students for what's out there. And really, what does it mean to be relevant in curriculum? This is something that we're still working on. And if anyone's working on anything in this area, we'd love to hear with you and talk with you. We're looking at topics and how do they align with the cyber landscape? Is it mapped to the current KU's guidelines and standards? We know that the CAE KUs have gone through several iterations, and guidelines such as NICE and DCWF have also gone through several iterations. So looking at how those still match up. Is the pedagogy employed effective? You know, is something being taught in a lab that might work better in a collaborative effort? Is there an individual piece that maybe could work together in a lecture? Are the materials or tools usable in a classroom setting? I've gone through this recently where I had a tool that was available for educators, but they don't have that version anymore. I don't have the funds to pay for 30 licenses for this specific software. So how do I adjust my material to really kind of still teach what I need to, but maybe use a different tool or use a free version of that tool? And finally, does it address real world challenges and experiences? Are we trying to pull things in that are useful, or are there case studies that could be useful? And there's many more facets to this. These are just things that we've been thinking about and we love to share about it. And especially because we have so much curriculum to kind of look at, we've been trying to form these questions as we move forward. Now, how do we actually get this done? We've been doing this for a little while now, probably about a month, a year and a half. And we have kind of a two-step process. Our first one is timestamping. Right now, we have everything before 2020 under what we call a relevance review. So we go through the curriculum and check for broken links, and we check for topics, and we're looking at learning outcomes and tools and things like that, so that we can continuously have relevant material on our site. And this is, again, a very collaborative effort with the authors. If the authors are still working on this material, which we found out through this process, where they have more updated material, they have newer material that we'd love to have on Clark as well. So how can I use Clark? I'm gonna turn it over to Michael.
So again, you can find us at clark.center. So from the homepage, you can go to the Browse All button. Well, real quick, so feel free to create an account as well. So over in the top right corner, you'll see register. And just to make this point, so we require an organization. If you do not find your organization in the list, select other for organization and reach out to us so we can add your organization to our curated list of organizations. And then you can update that later in your profile. But just wanted to make that point real quick. But so from the homepage, you can go to the browse page, and from here, you have all the wonderful assets. You can browse by collection. So if you're looking for Gen Cyber, for example, or NSA NCCP, you can do that here. And then you can do lengths. I know these terms are a little foreign to some people, but a course is 15 weeks. If you really need the information, you can hover over it and kind of determine what you need, where the nano modules are kind of like your labs, your modules are the couple-week courses, etc. You can even filter by topic. So if you're looking for something in cloud security, blockchain, or IoT, you can find specific learning objects on that. You can even filter by level. So again, filtering by K-12, which level of K-12 is it, undergrad, graduate, postgraduate. And then if you're looking for guidelines, you can actually search for specific guidelines. So say you're trying to align to K0073, which is the NICE workforce elements, you can find those learning objects that are mapped to that specific guideline. Once you find your learning object that fits your needs, you can click on it and go to the details page of that learning object. So from here, you get a description of what is this learning object will achieve, the learning outcomes, again, based on Bloom's, and all the mappings that those outcomes are mapped to in the guideline frameworks. On this page, you will also notice the levels that this is applicable to, and then all the material that is included for this learning object. So we have a ton of files here. This is actually a huge learning object, sorry. But if there's any URLs or notes, that also will be here. Real quick, I'm just going to go ahead and sign in and show everyone what you actually get when you download this. Whoa. So cool. So once you're signed in, you can download. So it should be a nice little compressed zip folder. Oh, there it is. Cool. Then once you do that, you just extract it.
You're not sharing anymore.
Oh, sorry. Okay, well, the screen share messed it up, but essentially you would get all the files that are included here. And then the only other thing is that there's a readme.pdf that is essentially the same information that is on this details page. But say that you have a large VM or something that is not included in the file download, you'll be able to access a direct link to download, say, a 1 gigabyte VM. I know it's kind of big for some people, but we do have them on our system. Then the other point here is that when you download an object, it gets saved to your user library. So in the future, you use this one semester, then next semester, you're looking for the material, you can go back to your library and easily download it again. And then for the point of relevancy and revisions, if there's any updates made to that material that you downloaded previously, you would be notified here that there's been updates and you can check out that new material as well.
And just one quick note, kind of going along the same lines as revision and relevance and this idea of community, we also have a review system. So if you're using this curriculum in your classrooms or you're utilizing it and changing it, we would love to hear from you. And I'm sure our authors would also love to hear the feedback that you have. It's very helpful. A few of the reviews that we have been very helpful for us to just kind of understand a little bit more about maybe what people are looking for, what things might be confusing about sharing curriculum in this way. So if you have used Clark, or if you are going to use Clark, we would love to hear from you in the reviews. If you don't want to leave a review, you can also reach out to us. We're going to give you some contact info at the end as well. So I just wanted to highlight that. It's a great way also to kind of build this community of working together to keep this curriculum relevant and usable for the future.
Just one more thing before we leave this page. Paige mentioned that we use Creative Commons. And so what that means is that you can download the material, remix, reuse to fit your classroom needs. All we ask is that you attribute back to the original author. And we have this little button here. And all you do is click the copy button and it would copy that attribution. And you would just put that in your slides or your material as needed. And anything else?
So build it.
Cool. So this is very much so the consumer side of things. Now, as an educator, I actually use Clark to build my curriculum as well. So I go to my dashboard, and then within the dashboard, this is where we can build all this modularized content. So you would just click new, and then it's the same information you see on the details page. You give it a name, the authors that worked on it. So I can, as long as they have an account on the system, you can add as many authors as you want to your learning objects, select the levels and lengths of the learning object, the description. And then, oh, I guess I should have been doing all this. Let me go to one that's already done. Sorry, I apologize. It's not working. There we go. So, go ahead and do this. And I teach Introduction to Computer Science. This is actually a really good learning object. And then in here, I have my learning outcomes, which uses the Bloom's taxonomy. So I pick the verb of Bloom's, and then I would fill out the specific learning outcome. And then within over here on the right, you will see the map, the suggested mappings that map to that curricular learning outcome. So then I can just do the alignment that way. And then if there's any materials, I would come to the materials section. It's a simple upload process. Any URLs, I would put those unique URLs in here, as well as additional notes to the learning object. I would add that here as well.
And if you had any questions about specific materials, we do have notes on the side here for videos. We try to get them up on YouTube. We have our own YouTube channel. So any materials that are video based, we try to get those onto our YouTube or onto the author's YouTube. It's also up to you if you want to provide solution files. Since this is publicly available, anyone, including students, can technically find it. But the great thing is that profile gives everyone access to your contact information, so that if they do want to get those solution files, that is a possibility. And then we have some other ones as well. But if you ever have any questions, if you're interested in submitting and kind of contributing on Clark, you can always reach out to us and we'll have the contact info at the end. To ask about specific materials. We're willing to work with a lot of different materials. We have a note on malware there, as well as a lot of large files. We recently had a submission of a 32 gigabyte VM. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us about materials that you might want to contribute to our site.
Just one more comment about the model of Clark. So I'm using this to just build my curriculum. I'm not going to submit anything. Eventually, I should probably do that. But that's just the point of the builder that we have here, is to help you break up your curriculum in a way that is modularized. So that's what I'm doing exactly with my course. And then the last part of there is the submit for review. So if you do want to contribute to Clark, you would just submit to review, and that would go through the review process to our content team. Cool. Okay.
And if you want to keep poking around, we're at clark.center, and it'll take you right to our homepage here. Back here. Okay. So if you are going to create an account on Clark, you will be signed up for our curriculum updates. We try to highlight the curriculum that we think will be most useful based on different topics or based on different times of the year, depending on kind of what's going on. You can always unsubscribe for them if your email box is already too full, but we do give you that option to opt out as well. You can also follow us on LinkedIn. We try to also post about curriculum as well as some of our authors there. So if you're interested in keeping up with us via social media or on email, you can sign up here. Finally, we have some information, as I said before. If you're interested in getting in contact with us for any questions that you might have, we have a general inquiries box at info@secura.team. If you had any questions about the material, or if you had questions about submissions to Clark, you can email our editors and our editorial box. And then if you wanted to get in contact with Mike or I, our emails are down below as well. We wanted to leave some time for questions. So is there any questions?
You can put the questions in the chat, or you can just unmute and ask a question. I had one question that, so if you have a third-party curriculum or something like that, maybe from one of these certification organizations, is that, do you have information around that, or is that how you use CARD, which you may want to mention something about CARD as well?
Yep, that's a really good question. So for proprietary information, we can't have that on our site due to the licenses that they might already have, and they're more restrictive than ours. Now, if you would like to link to material that's helpful, that's where CARD comes in. And I can go to CARD really quick to show. Right there. There we go. So CARD is what we like to call the little brother of Clark. This is meant to be, I like to call it the cybersecurity phone book. So this has all of the different resources that might not be exactly curriculum. These are maybe academic centers and programs. If you're looking for cyber ranges and tools, knowledge units, student developed resources, we try to host these here so that they're easily searchable and findable. The one thing that we're really trying to provide with Clark is a one-stop shop for curriculum, but then we also have CARD, which is the one-stop shop for pretty much everything else. This one is a little bit easier if you're interested in submitting to this one. It's really just a link, a description, the affiliated organization, as well as just your author information. And you can find that at cauresource.directory, or if you already found us on Clark, if you come here and drop down on resources, it's the CAE resource directory. Cool. I think we got a question.
There's a question in the chat. Can high school and middle school students become members too, or is this website mainly for instructors, teachers?
That's a great question. So I know we've run into this in the past where we do require email verification, and a lot of K-12 schools do not allow their student emails to kind of do that type of a process. But because of the material that we have, and I'll kind of give a short little demonstration here. So if you're looking for a piece of material that you think might be useful in your class, you're free to download this, and you're going to get all the materials that are listed here. And you can also preview these in the browser. So then this document can be uploaded to maybe your Google Classroom, your Canvas, your Blackboard. And if you needed to make any changes to this, so for example, if you were not going to do, let's say, one part of this lesson, you had another piece that you were going to use. Because of Creative Commons, you can do that. So that's kind of how we try to advise K-12 to put that in. But if you do have the ability to verify email, they can sign up. Hope that answers your question. Cool. Okay.
Any other questions?
Go back to our contact info.
Yes, the PowerPoint will be available. It'll be posted. I think Mike can answer that in a few minutes. I have a question for the audience. Is that if you're using Clark or CARD, why don't you just put a thumbs up in chat, or something in chat saying, yeah, I use it. So that'd be kind of interesting to see out of this audience how many of you all really use Clark or are familiar with Clark.
Nice to see.
And then if not, if you haven't used it, then are you going to use it?
And while you make those decisions, and we do have a question on reviews as well that maybe I can answer. While you make those decisions, I think the important thing is, which I like to restate, that this is curriculum that is created by our community. It is submitted under Creative Commons free with attribution and non-commercial licenses. So Clark is always meant to be free. And that also goes back to the proprietary curriculum. That's not something that was never part of our philosophy. I think the big thing for us is we want to help the community as much as we can. And the question on the reviews, one of the things that we had learned from literature on building digital libraries is we would like not to be, for most of us who teach, all of us really on this call probably teach, right? We Google for curriculum. And our goal was never to be a Google for curriculum. Our goal was always to be a place to find curriculum that is high quality and that is ready to be introduced in our classroom. So we take our reviews very seriously. Not all curriculum that is submitted to Clark comes out the other end. But I have to say, all curriculum that is submitted to Clark, if and when it goes through the review process, we certainly learn from it. And I believe authors benefit from it as well. A page may comment on it. The review time does vary depending on how much curriculum we have that we are reviewing. But we try to keep a fairly short cycle. Paige, do we have averages on how long the review cycles are?
Yep. So it really all depends on the length of material that you're going to submit. If you're going to submit a whole 15-week course, that's going to take us a couple of weeks to get through. We do try to keep in touch with you throughout that process to maybe try and minimize the overall amount of comments that we might have. But for smaller learning objects that are maybe a lab or two, we try to get to it within about 3 weeks. Depending on, again, how many we get and how many submissions that we have. Summer is our busy time because we have a lot of people do have the time to actually come and submit their materials. So it really just depends on the length of the material, also the topic. For technical reviews, we have a couple of technical reviewers, and sometimes if we get a lot of one topic, a lot of maybe, let's say, Linux, or we get a lot of cyber law, then we might have to kind of shift around duties to try and get that stuff reviewed as quickly as possible.
There's another question in the chat about, is membership and Clark resources restricted to the United States organizations only?
All we ask is for an email. So that's really the only block there. And it doesn't have to be an .edu email. It can be a .org email. It can be a .com email. Just as long as you're signing in. You can't download anything until you have an account on our site.